The Real Investment Show.
And welcome back to the show this morning. You know, about this time of the year, we start getting out all of these predictions for next year. All the analysts, Wall Street, et cetera, come out and say, well, we predict the market's going to be, 5,000 next year, whatever. And it was interesting because this time last year, that was what everybody was saying, right? Goldman Sachs, Morgan Stanley, et cetera, targets for the S&P 500 were 5,000 or better. Here we are at 4,000 right now. So, the problem with forecasts, predictions, et cetera, is they're generally wrong. Other things happen. And, but from a predictor standpoint, right, if I want to be a prediction expert, right, the best thing to do is always predict to the upside, because more often than not, you get a rising market. More often than not, it's just the bear markets really suck. But if you say, oh, market's going to be 4,500 next year and it gets to 4,400, hey, you were close enough, right? And nobody really cares when you're wrong, because all they remember is when you called it right. And it's just the way the markets work, and people want to be optimistic. And it's always interesting when I post stuff out on Twitter. I'll say, look, market's a bit over exuberant right here, a little overbought, and immediately I get a bunch of comments. Well, I don't see any reason why the market's going to come down now, right? You just it's up from here. Everybody wants to be optimistic, right? Because hey, we like making money. We like when things go up because we always make money. Anyway, it always like the predictions because, again, it kind of gives you a good framework for, over optimism. Helps you kind of base your expectations for the next year. But every year, Saxobank comes out with their most outrageous predictions, and generally most of these never happen. But every once in a while, they'll nail one, and it's always kind of interesting when that happens. But here's a couple of the 10 outrageous predictions for 2023. The Billionaire Coalition creates a $1 trillion Manhattan Project for energy. It's the largest research and development effort since the original Manhattan Project that developed the first atomic bomb. Now, these are all predictions, right? This isn't really happening. Just, okay, the things I'm going to read to you from this list, those are predictions, and they're a lot of hyperbole and very outrageous. So just because I read this doesn't mean it's actually occurring. But it is interesting because, one of the things when, you talk about things like, critical race theory has been a big hot topic this year, with school boards, et cetera. And that comes out of Marxist teachings. And Klaus Schwab of the World Economic Forum, he's pushing this kind of Marxist idea into the world. He says, basically we need to kind of operate where corporations own everything. And basically you just kind of are subservient to the world corporations and the world elite. And the idea is that you really don't know much about yourself and you can't really take care of yourself. So the few wealthy elites and the governments of the world and the big corporations, they're going to, control everything. They'll have all the wealth. They'll live lives of luxury. You'll kind of scrap for what you need, but you'll rent everything you want and you'll be happy. That's the idea, right? It's all about power at the end of the day. But so these billionaires are going to get together, create $1 trillion Manhattan Project, and solve all of our energy problems. French President Macron will resign next year. In a televised address, he will criticize the opposition's standpoint of absolute blockage and announces he is retiring from politics. There's probably a few people that wouldn't be too upset about that. For you gold bugs, Saxo Bank says gold will rocket to $3,000 as central banks fail on their inflation mandate. Now, the only problem with that is that we've had 9% inflation this year at the peak, and gold didn't rally. So, take it for what it's worth. The EU Army. That's all I need to say right there. Let's just move on to the next one. Actually, EU Army forces EU down a path to a full union. In 2023, it becomes clearer than ever that Europe needs to get the union's defensive posture in order. You know, this is one of the interesting things about the European Union, if you didn't know this, is that the United States is a union, right? We're a monetary union, just kind of like the Eurozone. The difference is that we form this union of states. And if you kind of thought about the United States as for a second, like the European, like the EU, Texas is a country, Louisiana is, I don't know what you call Louisiana, but Mississippi, that's another problem. Florida is a country, California is a country. I'm joking. But each state is a country, right? We all came together as these individual countries, and we said, okay, we're all going to operate under one currency, one central bank, et cetera. And we had a contract called the Constitution and Bill of Rights, et cetera, that tied all this together. So we created this monetary union under a central premise. The problem for the EU is they wanted to replicate this experiment that was very successful in the US by creating this monetary union in the EU. Where they failed and came up short was they never tied it all together with a constitutional contract. So they keep having all these problems. Brexit, etc. It's also the problem when you need to have a military, when you're not all operating under one kind of union. Everybody wants to have their own army, etc. Just imagine Texas has an army, Louisiana has an army, California has an army, Seattle has a bunch of baristas. So, got to have a central union. Anyway. Number 5, a country agrees to ban all meat production by 2030. So, didn't say which country, just a country. It plans to ban all domestically produced live animal source meat entirely by 2030. We'll see how that works out. Still think there's a lot of people that want to eat meat, not bugs, like the World Economic Forum wants you to do. UK holds un-Brexit referendum. Now, remember, we just talked about the fact in 2015, 2016, remember we went through the whole Brexit thing. The UK wanted to exit out of the EU. Now they want to potentially, this is the idea that in 2023, they'll go through an un-Brexit at Tiffany's. I wouldn't put a lot of weight on that one. Number 7, widespread price. Now, this one might actually be a reality. Widespread price controls are introduced to cap official inflation. This is something that, back in 1947, following World War II, was a poll was put out because of inflation that was running back then. It's like, should we have price controls? And there was a very big support for price controls. And you've heard a lot about this year, as well, capping the price of oil, capping the price of food, as an issue. And so the idea of price controls at the consumer level, when you go out to the voters and say, hey, would you like price controls? People kind of immediately go, yeah, if you can put, just cap oil prices at, $3 a gallon of gasoline, right? Whatever. That sounds great. Economically, it's a terrible idea. And you can only imagine what happens economically when you start trying to do price controls. It leads to a whole bevy of other economic outcomes. And nearly all wars in history have ultimately been fought over price controls because it doesn't work out well. Number 8, OPEC and Chindia. Or Chindia? I'm not. I think it's to be Chindia.
Chindia?
Chindia?
Yeah, Chindia.
Yeah, Chindia. Walk out of the IMF, agree to trade with a new reserve asset. Recognizing the ongoing weaponization of the U.S. dollar by the U.S. government, non-U.S. ally, which is interesting considering, when President Trump was in office, it was about China manipulating their currency. They were the currency manipulators. Now we're the currency manipulators. We've weaponized the dollar. According to Saxobank, non-U.S. allied countries moved to leave the USD and the IMF to create an international clearing union, ICU, with a new reserve asset. The bank core currency code will be KEY, K-E-Y. They will use Keynes' original idea from the pre-Bretton Woods days to thumb its nose at the practice of the U.S. and leveraging its power over the international monetary system. That's a really low probability event, like zero. USD, the USD Japanese yen fix to the USD at 200 as Japan tries to finally overhaul their financial system. Of course, Japan on the verge of just complete bankruptcy at this point. Japan's real GDP will drop by over 8% when this occurs, according to Saxo. Again, prediction, not reality. Last one. Tax haven ban kills private equity. Probably would not be a bad idea. The OECD agrees in 2023 to move to a more aggressive stance on tax havens, launching a full ban on the largest tax havens in the world. Now, again, this is probably something that has I'm not sure it'll happen in 2023, but I suspect this is something that will happen down the road at some point, is, a move to basically get rid of these tax havens, because again, with all the debt that is out there in the world right now that has to be serviced, where these tax havens are keeping tax dollars from getting to those in power that need those tax dollars, move to ban these tax havens or doing something different is certainly an interesting possibility. So that's the 10 outrageous, more or less, predictions of Saxobank for the year. Always interesting this time of year. Anyway, that wraps up the show. Have a great day. We'll be back here tomorrow. Stick around. Our latest blog post is out on the website talking about the bull case has two problems. And of course, if you have any questions or comments, be sure and send us an email. Always happy to help you out any way we can. realinvestmentadvice.com. Have a great day. See you back here tomorrow.